All right, Guy Danhoff here with, of course, Coach Burianek. Coach, it's the start of 2018. This is the first Coaches Show. We are live on location at one of the greatest training centers at D1. And the reason why I said one of them, because they actually have 50 locations nationwide. We want to say thanks to our friends at D1 for allowing us to go on location. Coach, let's just dive right in. Training camp. Dog days of August. I know your players are actually glad that school's back in session. I have them in class, as you know, and they're smiling. They know it's game week. But give us maybe top 2-3 takeaways from training camp.
Well, I think the one thing that came out of training camp, really the biggest standout was an opportunity to evaluate these guys in a competition setting. We were really excited about some of the newcomers coming in and how that would mesh and look together as a whole team. You know, that was something we talked a lot about in spring. Talked to our guys that before the summer is that, you know, some of these guys coming in, we're really going to challenge them.
Right.
And that was something that we saw throughout training camp. And I think one thing that was exciting was just seeing some of the returners look around the room and notice that some of the players were different. You know, our size was a little different than what it has been in the past, and watch everybody elevate their game as a result. And then obviously, you know, just kind of seeing how the pieces were going to come together and you know, how what I really took a lot of pride in is watch this group start to work together as a team, you know, which is a really tough thing in football because most of your year you spend going against each other.
Right.
And so there was a lot of competition, but, you know, at the end of the day, I think a lot of unity as well.
All right, let's camp on that because, as you know, a couple days ago we had Gunnar Griffin on our last Periscope for MBU Football, and Gunnar talked about team identity. I was wondering if maybe you could address that, what he meant by that, or really bigger picture for the team. How are you guys changing your identity?
Well, it's hard to say that we're changing it because I think that it's all part of the culture that we've tried to establish over the last, you know, especially over the last 2 or 3 years. What I think is the biggest difference is the fact that you're starting to see it really start coming to fruition. You know, we've talked a lot over the last couple of years about competition, about, you know, being a character, you know, being a family, you know, being tough, both mentally and physically. That's stuff that we preach all the time.
Right.
It has not always been there. You know, it's been there in pieces. But I think what we're seeing this year is with some of the new guys in the increase in talent across the board is that it forces the competition to be better. It forces everybody to elevate their game and be tough. You know, missing a practice now is a big deal because of you know, the talent that's out there.
Right.
So that's a big thing that we've had to overcome as a new program.
Right.
But definitely, you know, again, I think it's something that is standing out. I don't necessarily think it's like a new thing, but the identity is really starting to become a lot clearer.
Sure. So, Coach, with that, obviously I think all the Spartan fans know this is year 5 of the program. I just want to ask you a simple question. Obviously, like most businesses, most organizations, you have a 3 to 5 year plan.
Sure.
Assess coming into year 5 where you think your vision has been for getting us to year 5.
Well, you and I talked about this a little bit yesterday in preparation, and I think the honest answer, as somebody who's very aware and has high standards,
right,
we're not even anywhere near where I had hoped we'd be at year 5. You know,
okay.
and I'm saying that from a guy that, you know, when I took this job in a 5-year plan, I wouldn't be saying necessarily that we're 4 years in and we have 7 wins and stuff like that, you know. But I think as you go through the process, it's really easy as a young guy taking on a first head coaching job, starting a program new, to have very high standards.
Right.
And then there's realistic standards. And I think where we're at realistically, I'm very proud of where we are. You know, there's a lot of things we've had to overcome being a new program.
Right.
And being in one of the toughest leagues in the country. I always say it to people that St. Francis and Marion and St. Xavier and all those teams that are competing for national championships, they don't care about Missouri Baptist. You know, they're worried about what they're doing, and that's
right,
how it should be.
Right.
So, you know, I think we've made a lot of good progress. There's a lot of guys, you know, we're starting to get consistent, you know, 17, 18, 19, 20, you know, people classes of seniors. I think this year we have 17 or 18 seniors. Last year we had 18. So that stability is starting to get there.
Yep.
But again, as somebody with really high standards, it's hard to say that we're exactly where I had hoped we are. But again, I think I'm very, very excited about this year. I'm very excited about the work that we've put in over the last 4 years and where it's at. And there's a lot of things to be proud of, and it's all due to the hard work of the guys that have been here and stayed here.
Right. So talk to us a little bit. Let's start with the coaching leadership. Obviously, you've made some changes in that area. You have Coach Coe and Coach Williams going to split up, I guess, the responsibilities of the offensive coordinator. Of course, you have for a second year Coach Bowden back. But just from observing practice, this is a much different mindset than I've seen in the past 4 years.
Well, I mean, you hit on the assistant coaches. I mean, their standard is as high, if not higher, than mine. And that's kind of an old adage in coaching that I've always been taught from former coaches that I have, is that when your players care as much as your coaches do, you're going to be really successful. And when your assistant coaches care as much, if not more than me as the head coach, it translates to really good things on the field. And we just got a great group. We got a great staff. They expect a very high standard, just like I do. We've had that in the past, but I think, again, transferring and the clarity of the message and having a purpose about it is different than what we've seen in the past. And the one thing that is really standard is, out of all those guys that you mentioned, Coach Bowden, Coach Coe, and Coach Williams, and myself, every last one of us has Division I experience, which we know what the standard is there, and those three guys have NFL experience. So we're holding those guys to a very high standard, and everybody is on the same page of what that looks like, and that translates over to the guys, and I think it's going to pay off this year.
Yeah, let me just make a side comment that Spartan fans, let me tell you, from being on the sideline, I can tell you one thing on the defensive side: if a guy is even caught slowing down in the pursuit, they might have to sit out a series, they might have to sit out part of practice. I've actually seen one of your guys sit out for entire practice. So you guys are taking that very serious. On the offensive side, just watching the linemen play with Coach Williams, the whole pound to rock mentality. I mean, really getting after, being very assertive in their blocks, holding their blocks longer, and sometimes pancaking guys to the ground. It's like no camp I've ever seen. So again, kudos to what you guys are doing there. Now let's shift the focus to leadership on the player side. Who are some of your emerging leaders coming into this week against Lyon?
I think you got to look at senior Johnny Reed. He's a guy who, we were talking about him again this morning, and Johnny has never missed a practice in his 4 years.
Cool.
As an offensive lineman, that's a pretty big deal.
It's very hard.
And so, just having a guy like that is just there. He's a reliable guy.
Yep.
That you can count on. Johnny Reed's a guy that is a great leader. Kendall Davis continues to emerge as a leader, and what he does every day. I challenge anybody to turn on the film and we point to him with the young guys is, turn on the film and show us a play where Kendall's not going 100%.
Right.
I'm watching him work against the scout team yesterday, sprint 40 yards downfield to finish a run when the whistle blew 5 seconds before.
Wow.
He's a pro in how he goes about it. Devontae Johnson and Jalen Cowley are two other guys on the defensive side that are in that same mold. I pointed out to the young guys early training camp. I'm in the DB room with those two guys. And when we start the meeting, Jalen and Devontae have their notebooks out. They got their pen in hand. They're ready to take notes. And you look around the room, and all the freshmen are there. They're eager to watch film, and they got nothing to write on, out in front of them and stuff. And they're just professional. They're just pros in how they go about their business. They're very serious about it. They have a lot of fun, but they're leaders, and they hold everybody to a very high standard, which ultimately is what a leader has to do.
Absolutely. So, Coach, I know that you gave us the 2 deep recently, and we had a chance to look it over. And one of the things that stood out to me, and Spartan fans, this is really exciting. For the first time ever, you only have 2 freshman starters. Now, I know you're going to comment on that. There's some other freshmen that will get in the mix. However, you only have 2, which means on both sides of the ball, you have one on offense, you have one on defense. I'll let you explain that in a second. But the point is, you've got some key leadership. You've got guys with experience. You've got the all-time leader in wide receiver in Isaiah King. You've got the all-time leader in passing yards and touchdowns with Gunnar Griffin. You got Kendall Davis, who last year ran for 200 yards, 3 touchdowns in a big win against St. Ambrose.
Yeah.
Okay? You're bringing, and then, of course, on the offensive line, you got the biggest and most baddest line you've ever had in the 5 years. So, my question here is, what does that mean to you now that you only have 2 freshmen, and now you got experience finally on both sides of the ball?
Well, I think the first thing it does is it makes me wipe my brow in relief, and I say that, and we talk to our freshmen about this, but freshmen are not meant to play college football. Like there's some that are elite, and at the Division I level, you're starting to see more and more freshmen play. But that's a little bit misleading because those guys are enrolling in January.
Right.
They're going through spring football.
Right.
They're going through all the summer workout.
Right.
So by the time season rolls around, they've essentially had a spring ball under their belt,
right.
which is a huge difference maker.
Right.
To adjust to the speed and stuff like that. But freshmen, after 3 weeks of practice,
yep.
by and large, it takes a special guy to crack that lineup.
Sure.
So, there's a lot of relief there. We've got a lot of talented guys that are going to earn their stripes, but, they've got to get that OJT. They got to get that on-the-job training.
Right.
They got to, as we talk to some of the DBs about, is like, listen, you guys are going to get baptized in what college football looks like in a game. Lion's going to do that. We're blessed to have Kendall Davis and Isaiah work them every day.
Right.
And it's amazing how many times, Isaiah might beat a freshman deep and they come back and they're like, okay, so that's what it's about,
right.
So again, it's not a negative thing. It's just kind of how it's supposed to be,
right.
And I think back to SEMO of the number of freshmen we put out on that team and the years since that
right.
we're finally getting to a point where that stability and that that learning curve that they've already gone through some of that, and that just makes them better football players on the field.
Right. So while we're still on the offense, can you maybe tell us kind of who your starters are going to be?
Well, Johnny Reed we mentioned. Cody Markle will be a
yeah.
starter. Austin Bush is a returner. Those are all offensive linemen. Thomas Smith is a freshman that we just mentioned,
yeah.
one of the few freshmen that'll get starting time. Jaden Williams is another freshman who you may see. I think
right.
those 2 guys are really special as young guys, but right now Jaden will back up Austin Bush. KJ Satcher back, he had another good year. And then you mentioned Isaiah.
Right.
Some of the other guys, Nick Brown, Sergio Lopez, Dom Demarath, who are returners. Those guys will be at wideouts. And then you got Kendall Davis at running back and of course, Gunner. So,
right.
Offensively, there's a lot of talent there, but ultimately, they've got to go out and execute, and that's what
right.
we've got to do. Something we didn't do a great job of against Lyon last
right.
year. We turned the ball over too many times, and I just a big believer in that first game. It's going to come down to who takes care of the ball, who executes, yep. Penalties, and obviously special teams.
Right.
So, that we just gotta. We don't have to be real fancy. I think
right.
we just have to go out and do a better job of being us, and let the cards fall
yeah.
out how they may.
And for perhaps some of the baseball NAIA coaches and players, certainly following the story of Roosevelt Henderson,
yep.
obviously the big slugger for the baseball team. How's his camp been?
Rose's done a really good job. I think he's been out of football a little bit, and every
yeah.
time he steps out there, he gets a little more comfortable. But we'll see how much he'll contribute in game 1. But he'll definitely be a big time contributor as the year goes on. It's just kind of getting him up to speed. And again, he's got about 2.5 weeks of football under his
right.
belt in a new offense. And honestly, he's never played offense in his life. He was a defensive lineman, but he's got really soft hands and is a physical guy. So we're going to take a look at him at tight end. He's done a really good job. And it's just kind of getting him to that point where, not only we feel comfortable, but I
sure.
think he feels comfortable being out there.
Right. All right. Let's flip to the other side of the ball. You obviously have defense. Tell us about your defensive starters and impact players.
I think we've talked a lot about him. Jalen Cowley is a guy, Devontae Johnson. Eric Taylor's a safety that'll be new, and Kenyon Perkins is a guy. And, we got some young guys on the defensive line, some transfers that are giving us a lot of good minutes. But, I think defensively, you got a really fast, physical, competitive group there.
Yep.
And that's what we've tried to build it on. So, if they go out and execute like they can and they play physical and we play physical on both sides of the ball, I think it'll be a really good game for us on Saturday. You know, Lion, that's who they are. They're physical, and that was one thing that we felt to be in this league and to play Lion. You know, the Mid-States and Lion, it's a physical league.
Right.
We had to get more physical, and so I'm hoping that that's what we see on Saturday night.
All right, last question. Again, just to educate the Spartan fans, Lion is coming in a complete revamped coaching staff from top to bottom, including their head coach, who's come all the way from the CFL as he coached at Edmonton Eskimos last year. And they also report they have 60 new players. Do you see that perhaps as an advantage?
Not really. I mean, to a certain extent, you know, I know that they don't have the time and the consistency that we've had, that we talk about as being a big factor,
right.
You know. But, you know, the bottom line is when that ball's kicked off, it doesn't matter how long you've been there. You know, it doesn't matter if you've been a CFL coach or an NFL coach. You know, it matters about the guys on the field.
Right.
How prepared are they? And ultimately, you know, I trust with that type of pedigree and that type of background that he's going to have his guys ready. And, you know, they're going to be hungry to get out there and play as much as we are. So, you know, I think at the end of the day, it comes down to doing the little things, being detailed, and if we can execute and use some of that cohesiveness to our advantage, then it may become a deciding factor. But, you know, if we want to make silly mistakes and do the things we did last year, then it's not going to matter if he's been there for one day.
Right.
If you turn over the ball 7 times and make foolish penalties, you know. My 6-year-old could go out and coach him to a victory.
Sure.
So, you know, we got to handle our business.
All right, Spartan fans, got something really exciting to share. We're having a live tailgate going on 2 hours before the game. If you want to be there at 3 o'clock, we're going to have a lot of fun going on at that time. And just want to say, Coach, wish you all the best. Obviously, as you guys take the field at 5 o'clock. For Jason Burianek, I am Guy Danhoff. And see us on the Spartan Digital Network live at 5 o'clock.